Good morning, everybody. It's time for Morning Manna. And this morning, I'm continuing this generational manna that we started at the beginning of the week. And as you know, this past Sunday, of course, I've mentioned it before, I'll repeat it, is when we have Family Sunday. We're very intentional about that. And why? Because the Bible is very intentional when it comes down to generations. And I want you to grab this, I want you to get this, and I want you to see how to connect the dots. How to connect the dots. Let me say it a third time. How do I connect the dots? Look at the intentionality of generational connection in Scripture and watch how you can do this in your life and in the life of your family. You already know it's going to be the text, the talk, the takeaway, 5 minutes or less. But let's get into it. I want to get into this and I want you to grab a hold of this. And let me say it again. How do I connect the dots with respect to my family tree, to generations, to the blessings that God has for me? Let's go. Good morning and welcome to Morning Manna, where in 5 minutes or less, you're going to get an impartation with the text, the talk, and the takeaway. Join the Morning Manna fam every weekday morning at 8 o'clock Central Standard Time. Don't forget to put in the chat the revelation that you get and share the manna. Now, let's get ready to have some manna so you can make it through your day. Let's connect the dots generationally. And what does that mean? And how do I do it? And what results and outcomes as a result of me doing it? The text is still the same, Psalms 145, 4. Psalms 145, 4. And you can look as a backdrop, Matthew 1, the entire chapter. You know, it's like this. The rich theological truth that we find in the context of this is the Bible isn't just a collection of individual stories, individual pieces to the puzzle, individual drawings. You got to connect the dots. So when you look at it, you see how God uses one generation to connect to another generation to move to another generation. That is why he says in Psalms 145 and 4, one generation commends your works to another. They tell of your mighty acts. Notice how, and I want you to grab this, that connecting the dots is directly connected to your your salvation, your walk with Christ. Why? How do we say that? Because Matthew, we won't read the entire chapter, but you know, it starts 42 generations. It tells you the generations that took place before the captivity or being in bondage and after, to then introduce us to Jesus, who connects us to our salvation. That's the promise. Let's get to the three things that will help you grab a hold of the promise. Again, Psalms 145, 4. One generation commends your works to another. They tell of your acts. Here is the first thing I want you to grab a hold of. God builds through generations. In Psalms 145, it reminds us that God works never is confined to one lifetime. When God introduces himself to Moses, he declared, I am the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Exodus 3:6. Revealing himself as the God of covenant continuity. Grab that, put it in the chat area. Likewise, Matthew opens the New Testament not with the birth of Jesus right away, but with the genealogy of Jesus, declaring that God's greatest promise arrived through generations and sometimes flawed people. Come on here. I want you to get this. Before Jesus entered history in a manger, he entered history through a family, generationally. So, one, God builds through generations. God could have introduced himself by his power alone. Pam, wow, fiat, here he is, the Big Bang. but instead he introduced himself through relationships. The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. He's reminding us that his promises are bigger than one person and one lifetime. And so it is with you and your family. What he begins with one generation, he often fulfills in another. Abraham received the promise, Isaac perceived the promise, Jacob expanded the promise. None of them saw the complete promise. They saw pieces of the promise. Understand where you are right now, you're seeing pieces of the promise for your family. Connect the dots. Connect the dots. Because the pieces that you have stewardship over, you have to disciple them well. But know that somebody's going to connect the dots after you. God builds through generations. Here's the second thing I want you to get. Write it in the chat. God writes through generations. He builds through generations. He writes through generations. Matthew begins with a family tree because your family story matters to God. Your family story is a part of the redemptive story of Jesus. Why don't you to grab this? Notice his family, Christ, the carpenter, but saints and sinners and prostitutes, Rahab, Ruth, the Moabite outsider, David, the restored king who fell in front of the whole kingdom, but was restored by grace. God doesn't wait for perfect families. He takes the families he has and he asks you to connect the dots. I don't know what's happening in your family. I don't know what's going on generationally, but connect the dots. Connect the dots. He writes through generations, and God blesses through generations. Every act of obedience today will echo in a manifestation of tomorrow. The prayers you pray today are not extinguished, they rest before God. I'm walking in prayers in the life of my parents and my great grandparents and grandparents. And so are you. You're connecting the dots. Let's hear some more in this third point. Live with your grandchildren and your great grandchildren in mind, even if you never meet them, which is my case. Not yet. I'm praying that the Lord will bless our family with grandchildren. But hear this, hear this. I'm going to live so that whenever, even if after I'm gone, they will know that I've connected the dots. Because hear this, that's how God works. He's always preparing for tomorrow. That's why he says you don't have to worry about it because he has it in his hands. So, what's your takeaway this morning? Think beyond your lifetime because God is connecting your dots. He's connecting your dots. What does that mean? Generationally. God plays the long game. How about you? The Lord be with you today. May his face shine upon you, give you peace. We're a little long, but I wanted you to get this. Share it. Don't keep it to yourself. Don't be stingy. Come on, Manna fam. Share it with someone. God bless you. I'll see you tomorrow morning with more Morning Manna, the trailer of the sermon that's coming Sunday.